Hey there, Internet. Welcome to the Hard On Gear channel, where I discuss and review my used and abused knives and gear. Cold Steel, a brand of knives that just about every knife person is familiar with. Probably one of the first knife brands you ever came across, like myself, if you're looking for a folding knife or a fixed blade, and you typed in something to Google along the lines of hard use, unbreakable, most badass folding knife ever. You've probably seen videos of Lynn Thompson swinging a giant knife through a pig or some cordage of some sort, giant bamboo. Basically, enough that you probably went and purchased a Cold Steel. Now, if you did, like myself, seen those videos, went and searched for like the most popular and the most reputable Cold Steel knives, you probably come across the Recon 1, or maybe the Code 4, the American Lawman, the AK-47. Lots of very, very, very reputable Cold Steel knives have been around for a long time. Now you've got things like the Cold Steel SR1 and SR1 Lite, the 8015, the 8010 Formax, more affordable budget monsters like the Spartan, and then you've got your XL Espadas, all of the normal and the eccentric and the gigantic and some of the crazy novelty stuff that Cold Steel puts out. Most of it's just about unbreakable. So when I was first looking for a replacement for my Recon 1, my 8-year EDC, as you've heard my broken record state many times, I spent a lot of time on the internet looking for something that was going to hold up to this. Now, while I was doing that, and a large part of it was because I had to take this apart to clean it, and I ended up just having an issue where I wanted to keep this apart for a day without putting it back together, and I didn't really have another good folding knife to use as a backup. So I ended up going and ordering the Luzon. Looking through Cold Steel's website, looking through the different options that I had. There's a lot of stuff out there, but for the price of around 60, 70 bucks Canadian, and for something that looked way cooler than anything I had before. In Canada, we're not allowed to carry balisongs or button-operated knives, so I thought this would be a cool thing to pick up, and it would still probably have a lot of function if I needed something as a backup whenever I didn't have the Recon 1 on me. Buying this knife, however, is a very large reason why this channel started. I spent about the next 3 months looking up knives to replace this and to understand why exactly I didn't know what I was talking about when I did my knife shopping, because I thought this was going to be a little bit more up my alley, and it turns out it wasn't. So I ended up getting the Azula 2 from Essie, the Manix 2 from Spyderco, and the Leatherman Swart from Leatherman as a good, well-rounded EDC to kind of replace that Recon 1. And the Luzon sort of just sat in the background for a while. When I did my review of this thing, I had used it for a while. I'd carried it for a few weeks. One of the issues is I don't have a left-handed pocket clip for this thing, so it's not super convenient for my left-handed self to carry. Also, it's kind of awkward and it's kind of scary looking to a lot of people in an EDC setting. But in the last couple months, I went and did a bit of field testing during my hiking, bush camping sort of weird little trip that I did a few months ago, just trying to mess around with some shelter building and firecraft. And I took this thing out and did some things you shouldn't do with it. Threw it at a tree a bunch of times, probably about, let's say I probably stuck it about 6 and probably smashed it off the tree another 6 or 10 times. And every time it hit, I thought, nope, that's the end of the Luzon. And I'll throw some of the footage in here while I'm talking, just to show you. I did some damage, and I did jam this thing up a little bit. At one point, I had to take the Pacific Salt 2 and smash the liner lock back into place because it had gone so far across the tang of the blade that it just wouldn't unlock anymore. After that, it worked just fine. And I did some batoning with it. I did some other hard field use tip tests, all that sort of thing, and it actually held up. You can hear there's some rattle. That actually is in the double lock mechanism, that double safe Cold Steel invention that holds the liner lock into place. Don't know if that's really all that great, but it's better than just having the liner lock, no doubt about that. Personally, I would think find a way to slap a triad lock or something else on there and maybe move on, but that's what they've done for this and a few other knives. When that's in place, you're not going to have any issues with that knife unlocking on you, and I did try throwing this and doing different things with that lock in place and not in place. Actually, when I threw it and it wasn't in place, more often than not, it would engage that double safety lock. But of course, throwing this at trees is not normal use, so that's kind of irrelevant for a lot of people's purposes, unless you're planning on throwing the Luzon and didn't want it to unlock once it penetrated something. But as you probably know, and if you don't, good to know that when you throw something, especially a knife, at a tree, it's going to penetrate and hit with way more force than you could ever create by stabbing that into a tree. And if you're a huge, big, tough guy and you think, oh no, I could definitely stab that. No, you can't. I got a pretty good grip strength and I can drive a knife into a tree pretty damn hard. I'm gonna get this knife into like a normal, say like a maple or something like that, maybe an inch. Whereas if I can throw this and get this to stick, it's going to stick maybe 2 or 3 inches. Then you can try that test over and over again. If you can throw knives at all, try it out. Let me know how deep you're getting with your stabs versus how deep you're getting with your throw. If you want some information on knife throwing for someone who actually knows what they're talking about and where I'll get a lot of my tips and tricks, Jason Johnson, pro knife thrower. All I need to say, there's plenty of good knife throwers out there. Full Tang Clan is another really awesome guy to watch. Yeah, Jason Johnson, pro knife thrower, got a lot of good tips for you out there. Check him out if you want to know more about throwing knives. If you want to see someone break knives and do stupid shit with them, keep watching my channel. So through all that stuff that I did to it, the Luzon held up, didn't break the tip off. As you can see, I have put what I'm going to call a friggin' terrifying edge on this knife. And it's 8CR13 MOV, so a higher carbon, cheaper stainless steel. It's going to sharpen up real nice. It's not a hard thing to sharpen. But I did a video of how to sharpen your knives with whetstones. A pretty basic beginner's guide, like anything I talk about. Not an expert in sharpening or anything really. It's just my own version of how I sharpen with whetstones after years of messing around. And I can get a pretty decent edge on a knife, especially a cheaper steel like 8CR13 MOV. And this thing is a laser beam at this current point in time. Look at that push cut. Oh, I love a nice push cut. That one didn't go so well. But this is probably going to get nest cut. Oh, that didn't go so well. Yeah. This is what I'm going to call Spyderco Sharp right now, which you've ever taken a brand new paramilitary 2 or something out of the box. You are going to be able to carve the meanest turkey with that thing. So with that edge, and I'll just show you here on my arm hair, which you'll see just, yeah. We're razor sharp right now, and you could shave your face with this thing if you had to. So what we're going to do is try and see how long this edge holds up, and I'm going to take the edge off this thing by beating it up on a couple pieces of wood, cut some paracord, all that kind of stuff, and just see how well this 8CR13 holds up. And I'm going to throw some gloves and safety glasses on and do a couple of tip tests, and just a little bit more wear and tear on this thing just to see. But between the field work I'd done on that trip and what I'm doing right here, I'm pretty confident that I underestimated the toughness of this knife. Now, in saying that, you cannot and will not get the same hard use performance out of this as you will the other cold steels on the table. Even the Kiradashi, which costs a little bit less money, it's less of a knife, but the proportions are built in a way where good luck trying to break this thing, plus the triad lock, plus the short stubby blade, plus it's a kind of a interesting Warncliffey utilitarian Tanto-ish, which just makes it that much tougher. This is probably going to last longer than this. Say maybe your Rat Model 2 would hold up probably just as well, but I bet you something like the QSB Penguin, QSP, I always want to say B, I bet you this is going to have a hard time holding up. But I think this is going to be another knife which I will try and destroy because I don't plan on using it much because it is a cheap commie QSP knife. Which, sorry people who work in that factory, nothing against you personally, just the politics that enable you to make such an awesome knife for so cheap kind of goes against what I'm trying to do here with this channel. But I will use you as a abuse knife to try and see how much you can take, and maybe we'll see how that compares to the Luzon whenever I get around to doing that. Probably later in the year just because of I'm going to be stuck in training for the best part of 2022. So let's take this out on a piece of dry ash, and this has been dried for well over a year. I was planning on making some kind of a, like carving a stick or some kind of a training tool out of this, and I never got around to it because it's got a giant crack going through it. But ash is a hard wood. It's not as hard as maple. It's not as hard as oak, but it's going to be harder than most other trees. Make hockey sticks, baseball bats, different stuff like that out of ash. And you can see, I'll cut some paracord first so you can see how quick the edge goes down. But this is biting in quite good. Full flat grind, not a bush knife. There, so there's our 550, and just see how quick this thing, zips right through. One strand, no problem. Let's see 2 strands, which we can only imagine no problem. Oh, and we got to try not to smash things. I'm going to cut my arm off if I'm not careful. Let's close the other knives because we're hard on gear around here and we can be pretty dangerous. So it went pretty easy through the doubled up paracord. Let's see if it goes through 4. And then if it does, we'll have a pretty good idea. And then if it doesn't go through 4 afterwards, we'll have a really good, oh wow, yeah, not a big deal at all. How about, is there maybe a way I can, yeah, probably not. Let's try 5. Can I get enough grip here? I don't think it's really gonna matter though, because I think at this point you get the general idea that this thing is gonna go through anything, wow, really, 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 really easy. So paracord test right now, very good sign for the sharpness of this knife. Pat on the back here in case you missed it. So let's dig into this thing a bit. And the hot spot, I'm feeling it right there in the inside of my thumb. I don't like that front flipper. It's not something I like in my knives typically. It's a hand guard and it is nice, and if you're trying not to get your hand sliced off by your own knife when you're stabbing into stuff, better to have that there than not. But man, that's not very comfortable at all. So pretty good there. Obviously, that's not going to do a lot to change my edge. How about we try and do the same thing, but with this piece of oak. So that is a little bit harder of a wood, a decent amount harder of a wood. And as you can see, it's harder for me to dig in. And now I am not wanting to do this very much because that is really not comfortable. That is a hell of a hot spot on the inside of that hand. And not the most comfortable for the rest of the hand either, really. Just a little bit too small of a grip. But you can see now that is a little bit harder of a wood. And why don't we just try, this is going to shake the camera like, yeah, wow, definitely a much more dense, much more hard wood. So bear with me, the camera's going to shake around like a son of a gun for a second, but let's just see what happens if I bang this around a little bit. All right. Yeah. Don't do that with your folding knives, obviously. But, hot diggity damn, we have a knife that is a little more capable than what I thought. Now, if you do that all day, you're going to have issues. But as you can see, that has done nothing to the performance of this. And maybe other folding knives, maybe other liner locks are going to hold up just as well. I do plan on finding that out with some of my cheaper knives. But if I was going to put any of my knives through this kind of hard use or ridiculous unnecessary testing, this is the one I think would probably fail first, despite it being cold steel. So that's really where the impressive nature of this knife is coming in and why I'm making this video. So now I'm going to throw on these cut-proof gloves, which I can't remember the brand. It's probably on the inside here somewhere. Kusi, or whatever that umla means. I'm supposed to pronounce that you like. Kusi? Anyways, got these for free from different House of Knives orders. They throw in like the odd pen, diamond sharpener, or glove. I'm also going to throw on some safety glasses because I'm going to try this tip out right now. And maybe I'll just pull my sweater up around my throat a little bit so I don't get shrapneled. Although I'm going to try and do this in a relatively safe way. But do not try this at home because you will probably hurt yourself like I might do right now. But at least I'll catch it on tape and you'll get to witness it. So tip, try and just do some, let's start with the ash actually. Yeah, see if it breaks off in that. So in the testing I did a couple months ago, I was doing a lot of this stuff, but some of it was in some spongier wood that was kind of half rotten. This is very, very dry, very not rotten, but I mean, this is about as hard as this wood's ever going to get in its life, unless it gets fire hardened. Nope. So it's not going really deep in here, but it's going deep enough that if the tip was super fragile, I'm pretty sure it'd be gone. Again, sorry for all the violent shaking going on there. Just again, that is a hard piece of oak slamming into that plastic handle and backspacer. Damn impressive. And there's the tip, and we did it. Who would have thought? So I think that was probably a useless test to have done because I think everybody knows that's what's going to happen. But now we have the opportunity to reshape that into what's going to be less of a clip point, which if you know me, not a huge fan of clip point. So if I take the back of that off a little bit and then reprofile that into a little bit more of a drop point, kind of a spear point. I think I might like the blade profile better. Anyways, that's me rationalizing me breaking the tip off. So there's one test proven. The tip of the Luzon is probably the most compromisable part. The spine seems to have held up fairly well with the bashing. The pommel held up pretty well with the bashing. I don't see any cracks around the screws, couple of dents. The liner lock, still just fine, of course. Didn't do a ton there to damage it. The throwing, I believe, is what would have damaged the lock the most, because you can actually see some liner locks get bent just because when this hits, there's so much force that if the liner lock doesn't move, sometimes it can actually bend it to the point where it's just not coming back. So let's do a little more of the scraping, and then we'll try the paracord out again and see how that thing cuts. And that's actually much better with the glove on. Much less of a hot spot, but again, the hot spot on the Luzon is not impressive to me at all. All right, so we haven't done a ton of hard work here, but we've dug into it enough that it's going to be equivalent to maybe a day or a couple of days EDC tasks, maybe a week or a month's EDC tasks, depending on what you do with your knives. But how is that holding up? Let's see the arm hair test first, because we know that was just a scary removal. Okay, pretty much the same there. Didn't really take too much of an edge off. I definitely felt it pull a little bit more. How about one strand of paracord? Pretty good. And I might need to grab another strand here. Okay, so let's see our 4 strands, which last time was just effortless. Okay, so I'm pushing a little bit more. A couple different parts of the blade. Let's try that again. But I'm pretty sure we've done a little bit of rolling. It's soft enough of a steel it's going to chip, or roll rather, before it ever chips, most likely. Yeah, just a tad bit of wear on the edge. But just to show you, HCR13, not a premium steel, not even a mid-range steel, but a relatively high carbon stainless. That is a popular choice for a lot of budget knives for a good reason. So there's 4, and I'm going to try and get 5 strands. And that was the test we did last time. We will see how well, if I can maybe do this without cutting myself. 5 strands, can we do it? And try and use about the same amount of resistance. But last time it just slid. I barely had to move it. So right now, 5, I can feel that this is a lot more dull than it was, and I got a 4 out of 5 there. So anyways, just to prove the point that you will dull your knife if you jam it into some harder materials. You will break the tip of your Luzon if you jam it in. And I mean, you can see I really hammered that in there quite deep before I actually started the twist. The other pry tests I did held up pretty well. So like again, I mentioned in the other clip, it was mostly a semi-rotten or starting to soften up piece of wood. The tip test worked fine in that. And I did try it in the live tree, and that was, again, a little bit softer, a little more moist. This dry stuff is about as dry and hard as it's going to get right now. So that is the kind of the ultimate tip test. And it didn't hold up, which is expected. But obviously, if you have something with a stouter tip that's less thin, I'm going to stab right through my table here, through my hand. Obviously, the tip test on this is probably going to be a lot more impressive. And I'm not going to try and break the SR1 Lite right now, but I can guarantee you it would take a lot more work, and I'd have to go pretty far in that, if ever, that it would actually manage to snap that tip off. But I know this is one people have been looking for quite a while. I have promised to do this video since about the start of the channel, and I don't know if this is exactly as much hard use testing as I wanted to do. In a bit of a rush right now, trying to get a bunch of content recorded before I leave for basic training. So I figured this would be covering most of the stuff people wanted to see with the Luzon. There's some different hard use tests that I could do and that still could be done on this. So if you have any ideas, let me know. I'm going to do something similar with the Kershaw Blur. I'm going to do something similar with the QSB Penguin. QSP, I always want to say B. So let me know down in the comments if you have some ideas. Also, again, if you think this is the type of content you like to see more of, hit the like button. I know this is called the Hard On Gear channel. I don't want to give people the misconception that this is exactly the type of stuff I'll be doing all the time. I just can't afford to go smashing knives like that every video. Also, it's kind of stupid. Now, if you have the money, and if eventually I have enough money coming in from this channel to be able to do videos like this, you will see me have a separate playlist of just these hard use and abuse tests. Really though, Hard On Gear is me in general just being a bit of a klutz, a bit of a dumbass to be quite honest, and just being hard on my stuff by being klutzy and through trial and error and just expecting stuff to hold up the way I think it should, which most of the time it does not. These tests are fun though. It's good to know the extremes. Don't do this stuff on your own unless you're being incredibly safe, and maybe if there's a purpose to be doing it other than just trying to break, because there's a lot of energy stored up in a little piece of metal when you're twisting and prying, and if something goes flying, man, you have no idea the amount of damage well, think about shrapnel, right? That's just flying pieces of metal at high velocity. You're not going to get the same speed from a flying piece of a knife tip, but you could seriously hurt yourself or somebody else, or if that tip falls on the floor and like a pet munches on it or something. So be careful, don't be dumb. This was a great video. I hope for your needs and your curiosity of what the Luzon could hold up to. It was a great video for me to record because it's fun to break stuff and go until you break stuff. And I could do a lot more with this, and I'm going to save maybe that for the next use and abuse test. I'll reprofile the tip and we'll see how that holds up maybe next year. So until then, feel free to check out the other videos. I'll put the couple of videos I mentioned already, the Luzon video and that camping video over here on the right. For now, check those out and some of the other content on the h.o.g channel. This is the Hard On Gear channel saying thank you once again for watching, and Hard On Gear channel signing off.